Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of May 29, 2022. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now. And there are massive celestial events taking place now. On the one hand, our effort and bravery is rewarded. We get an adrenaline rush that feels like a high and pays off. We've got a new moon as well, bringing new, brilliant, fortunate ideas. You add to this Mercury direct and Saturn retrograde. Very big news. Well, one of these would make very big news, but we've got all of that jam-packed into 1 week. So let's start with the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter. These two planets get together in the sky, sharing energy about once every 2 years or so. For these two planets to get together in the sign of Aries, which is the home sign of Mars, well, that is a more rare phenomenon to take place, but that's what we have as we begin the week. I consider this energy, on the one hand, to be one that can be very fortunate when it is that Mars brings intensity to Jupiter. But in order to tap into the more fortunate side of this energy, it means that we may have to act on impulse, trust our instincts, go quickly, boldly, and bravely towards the change and the new beginnings in particular that we desire. So that sense of initiation, that sense of new beginnings that is promised here under the light of Mars conjunct Jupiter, well, that's what we have as we begin the week. So whether this is showing up in terms of our inclinations, our attractions towards other people, very possible, as this energy can be very passionate. But also with this, our instincts can lead us to all kinds of wild gains. Where it is that we have to be careful with this energy, though, it has to do with where Jupiter magnifies Mars. And so if we're tapping into this consciously, we're raising the vibration of Mars and magnifying Jupiter, but where perhaps we're sitting back, we're seeing what shows up for us, we're not being proactive with this, well, it is possible that we attract experiences now, or we find people around us now having very strong responses, being spurred towards having reactions that seem to be larger than the situation calls for. And really, again, this goes back to this idea of us wanting the adrenaline rush. We are having a desire, a craving for intense experience. And that can be wonderful when we set the intention to direct this energy towards our sense of intensity and intense experience. But where it is perhaps that we're not directing this energy, it might just visit us. And it might be an opportunity to really get in touch with our passions that are more in alignment with our anger. But even anger points the way to some truth. Even our anger holds the seeds towards change. And that's ultimately part of the promise of Mars. Mars, to me, encapsulates the serenity affirmation. And so the serenity affirmation is, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. With Jupiter in the mix, well, the wisdom part can be magnified, but so can the need to bring on wisdom. So can moments that ask us, even if it's hard, to stop and cultivate wisdom. And sometimes we can only cultivate wisdom when we've crossed that line and acted from a space where we realize that, I could use some wisdom here. I stepped into a moment without keeping wisdom in mind. And whenever you have that realization, the great thing is that you can step back. You can take that moment. I see the way Mars is activating Jupiter as essentially making us aware of the larger Jupiter cycles that we have been through as a collective. And so if you think back, 2020, of course, we had Jupiter in Aquarius, Saturn is still in Aquarius, and all of that does suggest, and that brought on that sense of needing to be aware of our social connections, social distances from each other. Jupiter in Pisces encouraged us to consider healing, what it means now to move forward, to allow us to flow beyond and adapt to the changes that have been taking place. Now Jupiter in Aries, accelerated by Mars, is the desire for the experience of life and the embodiment of life, the desire to sweat, to connect with others, to know ourselves as more physical. Chances are that is going to arise at a time like this. And I see that as we begin this week for American friends and fans out there, well, it is a holiday weekend in the US, and chances are, if you are so inclined, you may find out, and if you are in the US, I think the clubs are going to be lit as we begin this week. I think there are going to be so many people who really want to connect with others, who want to share space, being in the same music, jumping around, sweating, enjoying themselves, connecting with other people as well in that heightened physical state. That may be part of the energy that we're bringing into this week. Now you add to this, as we start the week, we are in the dark of the moon. And it is going to be on Monday that we will have a new moon. Now the dark of the moon is thought to be a very sacred time. And so this is a time of heightened wisdom. The type of wisdom that can only come from within. If you think about it from the perspective of nature, the dark of the moon is when the night is especially dark. Normally at night, the ancients relied on the light of the moon. And it was the moon that illuminated feelings, emotions, for example, our own fears, our own desires. Well, when we have no light from the moon, the part of where it is that maybe our fears are there, they magnify. The part of the night where we are delving into the mystery of the night, delving into the unknown, it is magnified at this time. It's interesting because the moon and its phases have been understood as different sacred energies. When we look at ancient traditions, and I'm thinking particularly about ancient Greek tradition and the dark of the moon being associated with Hecate, and Hecate being the goddess of mysteries, but also a goddess that had to do with the wisdom that comes from experience. Sometimes the wisdom that comes from older age, from being a crone, for example, for having wisdom to share. It's almost as if the ancients understood that it is only in the night. It is only in the dark. It is only when we immerse ourselves there that we're able to cultivate wisdom that is truly timeless. And all of us have access to that wisdom within ourselves. And so when it is the dark of the moon, it's not a good time to initiate brand new endeavors as much as many of us are going to want to. With Mars conjunct Jupiter, lots of us are going to be feeling like we want to start something brand new, whether that's connecting with somebody new or starting new endeavors or brand new chapters in life. And yet we are in the dark of the moon. And ultimately, Mars conjunct Jupiter can bring a light to, can illuminate through the fire of Aries, illuminate the fears that we are contacting with Hecate, with the dark of the moon, now present. But the moon will give way to the new moon, which takes place on Monday, and the new moon happens in the sign of Gemini. And the sign of Gemini, of course, we know it as the twins, but really it is a sign of siblings. It's the sign of seeing other people as brethren, seeing your twin in others as you move through the world, understanding that others are just like us. That so much of those moments when we don't see ourselves in others are really rooted in false understandings of what it means to be us and what other people and whom other people are. The sign of Gemini and the energy of Aries as well are both very strongly associated with youth. And so the energy of Aries is birth, right? It's the very beginning, it's childhood. But it is the energy of Gemini that is associated with those years that we move through grade school and through high school, those very formative years where we're developing our brains, we're developing language, we're creating new neural pathways within our brains as well. And so it's not lost on me as I share this and as we are in the dark of the moon that very recently something very sad happened in the US, which was of course an act of violence where someone young, someone very despondent, went into a school of very young children and tapped into the more violent face of Aries. And it's an incredible tragedy and incredibly sad. And it was, of course, quite remarkable to many astrologers to see how this happened just as we as a collective are being asked to look at Aries energy, which is about anger. But I think with this new moon, we're also going to be asked to look at how it is that we are with our young people, how it is that we nurture them or the lack of nurturance that they get in terms of what could lead somebody towards tapping into that very base side of Aries. Every sign out there, every sign has a range of expression. So the higher end of the range of expression of the sign of Aries is self-knowledge, is enthusiasm and excitement and full engagement with one's life. It is breath and existence that is exhilarating. It is the adrenaline of life, the desire and the determination to live one's life independently and in accordance to one's creative impulse. But of course, the other end of that energy is anger that is not addressed, that is not healed. And my hope is, as I spoke of in the Jupiter special horoscope, my real hope here is that we start to bring healing to that part of the collective, that part of so many people, where there is this very wounded child inside that doesn't have healthy expression, that needs it. And how is it that spaces, for example, these spaces that young people are in as they move through grade school, as they move through high school, how do these spaces encourage and bring forward self-awareness in young people or not? How is it that ultimately they become spaces where experiences are gathered that either are going to fuel despair in later life or are going to provide the seed of hope through times that are challenging, through emotions that can feel overpowering or complex? And I say this because I think that a lot of us, and especially as a collective, there is a need for a lot of us to be more honest with ourselves. And I'm hoping that Jupiter conjunct Aries, but especially along with this new moon in Gemini, my hope is that it gets us talking to each other, but looking more honestly at what is happening with children and what is happening with very young people, because I feel like, especially as Aries energy has been taking place, magnifying, building, we saw it going all the way back to March. We saw it at the Oscars, right? We saw how the wounded boy, the wounded child can come forward in moments. And that's not to excuse anything at all, anybody's behavior at all. But it is to say that I think more of us can participate in our own healing and the healing of others. And in that way, to at least be willing to have that conversation of what meaningful healing would look like. And my hope is with the energy now, we're at least more of us are going to see the need to do that and are going to see the benefits of doing that, because something's got to get healed here, something. And especially for American friends and fans, where we see this arise again and again. My hope is that the desire for meaningful healing remains in focus, because if not, what's going to happen, in all honesty, is with all this heightened Aries energy right now, we as a collective are going to be attracting experiences that ask us to look at the child, ask us to look at the root of anger. And until we do, we are going to keep having experiences where we're being asked to do just that. And so we can start with ourselves, right? We can start by looking at our own selves and those moments when, as a child, perhaps we felt that there were situations where we had anger that couldn't be expressed in healthy ways. And how is it now that we're going to find healthy expressions for that? And how is it now that we're going to have a dialogue with each other to create the space to move towards how it is that anger provides the fuel for self-knowledge, the fuel for change? You know, until we feel like something isn't right, nothing changes. But it's when we feel like something is off and something is wrong that change can start taking place. And so my hope is that we start to see some of that take place, but ultimately that is an individual and many individuals coming together as a collective and sharing that responsibility. And so we'll see how that plays out in different parts of the world. But this idea of considering the collective, I think it is going to come into focus in very strong ways as we get to the end of the week. And so what's happening at the end of the week? Well, very big news. And that is Saturn stationary retrograde. Saturn will stand still in the sky and officially begin moving backwards in the sign of Aquarius. Now, this is special for a few reasons. So one thing that makes it special is that over the span of just under 30 years, 28 and a half to be exact, Saturn will spend about 2.5 years or so per sign. And so right now, Saturn in the sign of Aquarius has been in the sign of Aquarius first in 2020, kind of in and out, and then more comfortably at the end of 2020, throughout 2021, and now throughout 2022. Saturn right now in the later degrees of Aquarius, standing still, stationary retrograde, is going to start moving backwards here. But first will be at the height of his power as he stands still in the sky and in the sign of Aquarius. What this means is, as we navigate further, it is going to be October 22nd of this year that Saturn will station direct in the sign of Aquarius. And then Saturn's going to move on and march on, and in March 2023 will leave the sign of Aquarius, not to return again for well over 2 decades. And so what that means for us right now is that this move of Saturn, stationary retrograde in Aquarius, we are not going to see this again for almost 3 decades to come. So that in and of itself makes this very special, because this moment of truth that's going to be highlighted for us at a time like this, well, chances are it has an impact. Now, here's the other thing with this energy as well. When we consider one of, if not the most widely used chart for the US, and so we were just a few minutes ago talking about the US and what's happening for the collective and how that's showing up with our American friends and fans. And so when we look at the Sibley chart, so it's one of the most widely used charts for the United States of America, it puts the moon of the United States, and I know that there are a few different charts out there, but this is certainly one of the most widely used. The moon is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. And so I know this year in particular, lots of us have been talking about the Pluto return of the US, and I have something to say about that in just a moment as well. But the Pluto return of the US, that is looking at the Sibley chart in the 2nd house. But here we have the moon in Aquarius at 27 degrees. Saturn is going to station at 25 degrees. That is mighty close to that moon. When Saturn stations retrograde, on the one hand, just Saturn stations, Saturn standing still is a reality check moment for all of us. As a collective, certainly, but in our individual lives as well. Any countries out there that have important late degree Aquarian placements, like the United States and other countries out there, they're going to feel this energy as a collective, as part of their nation, that much more. And so as Saturn stands still, it gives us a moment to be honest with ourselves. But this is Saturn going retrograde, and ultimately the task is to reflect, to look within, to understand the self, where it comes to the individual, to understand something in the collective self, the collective psyche that could be playing out, and to be honest with ourselves, even if it's hard. That is where, and that is when Saturn can actually be part of forming the foundation to eventual blessings. Not right away, often with Saturn, because Saturn likes you to earn, but when we have Saturn station, it is a moment of truth, a moment that allows us to then look very deeply within with the retrograde to understand the practical changes that need to happen, where it is that our own actions could be fueling self-respect or not. Considering that this is the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius is an interesting vibration. It's the collective, but it's also the individual. I think a lot of us are going to be looking at our relationship to each other in a larger sense, but also how we understand ourselves. And I think a lot of us are going to be more deeply contemplating what freedom means to us. Freedom means different things to different people. That is one of those sacred truths I truly understand, truly believe. And it's very easy to judge other people's understanding of what freedom means. And especially if you just look at it on the surface level, right? But if we go deeper, we could identify even deeper needs. And that's where true freedom can be found as well. And so countries that have strong Aquarian placements, they tend to prioritize and identify very strongly with principles of freedom, for example. So when I travel, and especially when I'm in different countries, because you know how much I love that, especially if you've watched me for a while, I've recorded the weekly videos from really all over the world, right? So many spaces and places. And one thing I love doing is when I meet new people in my travels, I like saying, name 3 words that describe what it means to be from this country, or what the identity is of this country, or what you feel are the most important values of this country. And it's incredible how many people get stumped on this. Lots of people can't quite, grasp, and lots of people ask me to explain even further. And so I try to say, any 3 words that you think describe what it means to be of this country. What is the national identity, for example? And it's very interesting how different those words can be depending on where you go. But what I found is that in many ways, regardless of the word that they choose, if you get to the core, if you dig deep enough, you'll find that those words themselves represent, in a way, freedom or autonomy or independence. And so, for example, some cultures really prioritize family, right? They prioritize community connections. I think about, for example, you may know, again, if you've watched me for a while, I lived in Mexico for 9 years. Mexican culture prioritizes family very strongly. South Asian cultures prioritize family as well. But why is that? If you get to a deeper layer, you start to understand that so many of these societies, their social net is the family. It's their families that ensure that they're going to be okay. And that in and of itself, that knowing that you will survive because we are in it together, is a type of freedom as well. The freedom to actually exist, the freedom to live. And there are good things about prioritizing family, and maybe not so great things. Just like many cultures prioritize the individual. The individual is the nucleus of society. And there are great things that come with that, but also not so great things. So great things, especially in Western cultures, individual being the nucleus of society. Well, individual freedom, the freedom to be you, right? You being able to truly be yourself, your most authentic self. That is a privilege that some people will never know. And yet it can be very isolating. We live in closer spaces than ever before, but we are more isolated from each other than ever before in some places. And so it's interesting where it is and how it is. The principles of Aquarius show up in our own lives as well. And I think we are about to get very honest with ourselves in one way or another, where our responsibilities lie, to whom we are responsible within the collective, and where is it that the collective or the group is asking too much and we desire greater autonomy, greater individuality, and what that could look like for us, how that shows up for us. Now, the other big energy is happening on Friday, and that is Mercury direct. Isn't this so exciting? Mercury finally goes direct, and Mercury is in the later degrees of Taurus and speaking in supreme harmony with Pluto. And so I promised to talk about Pluto. You know, it's so interesting. Maybe you may remember early this year, I published an interview that I had on Israeli television with this incredible woman named Emily Francis. And that was such a wonderful interview. She asked great questions, very expansive questions as well. I'll try to link to that interview below. You can actually see it on my website, on the media page on my website as well. But having said that, after we had the interview, we exchanged a few messages. And what was really interesting is that right at the beginning of Russia invading the Ukraine, I remember her leaving a voice message and saying, you know, Pluto return of the US, the oil of the Ukraine. I think this is about the oil, Nadiya. I think this is about the oil. And I was thinking about how, like, recently in the US, the price of gas is through the roof. And we see this in Canada as well. I spent a month and a half in Ecuador recently. And in Ecuador, the price of gas was so inexpensive. I was shocked. I saw people filling their tanks with gas for $14. I couldn't believe it. And I remember asking people about this because this was such a shock. And people were telling me about how Ecuador remains autonomous where it comes to their energy production. So they have their own oil that they mine, and it is for the people of Ecuador. And so that is part of how it is that they are able to control and understand the cost of oil within that country. That's how they do it. Now, contrast that with what's happening in the US. So in the US, we've got Pluto return, right? Pluto return in the second house, having to do with commerce and money and earning money. And that's part of how it is that the United States has become such a financial powerhouse around the world. However, what's happening right now is that the oil companies are actually, what they actually did, and it's been coming out recently, very recently in the news, that they're posting record profits because when Russia invaded the Ukraine, they took that as an opportunity to raise prices, even though they didn't really need to, even though there's more than enough gasoline, more than enough, not only in reserve, but in production as well, that they shouldn't need to do this. And they are having record profits than ever before. And it really just comes down to the fact that the price of gas has gone through the roof in some of these places where the price of gas is free market. And price gouging, it's able to happen. And that's what it comes down to. And I thought that this was so fascinating. This goes to what's called the shock doctrine. And so the shock doctrine basically says that when there's a change that happens in the world, who's taking advantage of that? So something will happen and it'll shock us, but then we see how, whether it's companies or governments respond, And how they respond very often is to take advantage of what may be transpiring. Now, I'm not trying to be political at all here. I'm just saying that right now, Pluto retrograde is starting to move back over the Pluto of the US. And right as this is happening, this all comes out about what's happening with oil. Pluto has a strong astrological association with oil. Being that Pluto is god of the underworld and oil comes from very deep within the earth. So it has a well-established correlation astrologically. There is a well-established correlation between Pluto and oil. And so we're seeing how that can play out right now and how it is playing out in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see what the US does with these very big energies playing out right now, right? And especially right now with Mercury trine that Pluto and Mercury in Taurus. So Mercury is in Taurus, a sign that has to do with the economy in general, economies. It is associated with banks as well. And of course, Mercury has been holding tight within orb of a supremely harmonious connection with Pluto. We've been experiencing this last week. We're experiencing it now. We're going to experience it into next week as well, and even beyond that. As Mercury stands still, goes forward, but very slowly within orb of Pluto. And so I feel like the information coming out, there's a lot of truth to it. We are understanding what's happening with Pluto, with oil differently, and how it's connected to the economy, how it's connected to money. We're understanding why the price of oil, right? Mercury in Taurus, trine Pluto, why it is how it is. And so my hope is that as these things are illuminated, of course, we find our way forward from here. And my hope is that Mercury standing still in the sky, beginning now to slowly move forward, helps us to do just that. What I love about this week for us, well, there is a lot here. What a powerful astrological moment, I'll tell you. We've got this energy as we start this week, inviting us to consider the child, to consider what it means to talk and understand each other, to see ourselves in each other, even when it's hard. As we start the week, we are invited to explore the mysteries, including our own fears, as part of raising that energy towards greater understanding of ourselves and each other. But we're also invited to get in touch with what we're passionate about in all kinds of ways. Where is it that we desire to live and experience life more fully? Chances are more and more of us are going to be pursuing that. Now you add that to the very big energies at the end of the week. We have reality check, meeting truth and information coming forward. Well, all of that does say that there's real opportunities here for understanding and taking action that ultimately fuels healthy self-respect. And where it is that individuals have respect for themselves, it changes the way that they interact within a collective. And it makes us all better. It makes us all stronger, clearer, and more sure about liking the direction in which we are going. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. It means so much. Thank you so much. I'm truly so grateful for it. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes each and every week for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month, which choose your membership rate. Now, higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. I look forward to meeting you there. Synchronicity University presents some truly incredible events happening this summer at Synchronicity University. I hope that you will join us. This is all so very exciting. Well, first up, we have an very special speaker series that is coming up with 5 renowned astrologers whom I'm so excited are going to be joining us. Well, let me tell you about them. My friend Christopher Renstrom, world-renowned astrologer Christopher Renstrom, and he's going to be talking about Chiron in astrology. I think that's going to be so illuminating. My friend Christina Divina, she is so incredible, so wise, so loving, and such a brilliant up-and-coming astrologer. Well, she's going to be talking about Neptune. How cool is that? And so she's going to be helping us to understand Neptune in astrology. We have got my friend Clarissa Dolphin. Now, Clarissa is going to be bringing an understanding of the South Node in astrology. There's so much focus spent on the North Node. I'm so excited that we're going to get to explore South Node energy together. I think that's going to be very powerful to understand how it is that that connects us to community, how it is that connects us to the past, and how honoring that ultimately does align us with the North Node as well. We have Janae Anthony. I saw Janae Anthony on Stormy Grace's YouTube channel. I thought she was brilliant. I'm so happy because she's going to be talking about sex. She says it's like definitive and all-encompassing. This is very exciting. It'll be interesting to see what she has to say. Sign up for this just in time for Mars conjunct Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Very passionate energy. I think lots of people are going to be interested in wanting to learn more about what Janae is going to be teaching. And we have Alexis Duong. Now, she is a nerd like me. She's going to be bringing a philosophical perspective, helping us to understand what it means to be an astrologer, but also to accept the fact that life cannot be perfect. Sometimes you feel nihilistic. Sometimes you feel like the world sucks. So how is it that you're going to stay positive as an astrologer? How is that going to speak to how you interpret the chart? What a wonderful way to end the July speaker series as we just step into August. So I hope that you'll check that out. As low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate with Choose Your Tuition Rate, happening right now for the July speaker series and for a limited time only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Link is in the description below. Synchronicity University presents the one and only Marc Laurenson. Marc Laurenson is back and he's going to be joining us for a very special 5-week course, The Soul's Mission in the Birth Chart. What a wonderful topic to be exploring. Now, this class is proving to be very popular. Lots of people are signing up for it. I know it's going to be a very rewarding experience for so many people out there. Now, Marc Laurenson is a master teacher, a master astrologer. He is the principal of the Sydney School of Astrology. He is the legend in Australia and now, of course, in the world as he comes to Synchronicity University. And so you can see how there are truly incredible topics. I know every time I speak to him, I feel like I come away with a richer understanding of the higher purpose within my birth chart as well. And so I always learn so much from him. I know so many students are going to feel the same way. Right now, Marc's class is Choose Your Tuition Rate, as low as just $5 a class at synchronicityuniversity.com. For a limited time, you get to choose your tuition rate, an unheard of rate to learn from a master astrologer like Marc Laurenson. I hope you'll join us. Link is in the description below. I'm so excited to announce YouTube for astrologers at the world-renowned KEPLER College is back. Check me out at KEPLER College because that is where I'll be teaching my only business class that I teach once a year. Now, this is actually a very special class taught by this world-renowned school. And it is professional development. You don't have to be an astrologer, and it isn't just about YouTube. It really is a more all-encompassing class to understand how to be a spiritual entrepreneur. That really is the intention behind the class. You don't need to be an astrologer. It's more about understanding how you want to approach and engage social media or not. How it is that you can understand prosperity on your own terms, how it is that you want to understand launching a business at a fortunate moment, astrologically speaking, and how it is that you want to understand what it is that you uniquely have to share, and to be able to provide for yourself and to those to whom you are responsible as a result, I think is a very powerful thing that we can give ourselves and we can give each other. It's a very powerful contribution that we can make to each other as well. Now, the really key thing about this course is that it involves mentorship. So you get one-on-one time exchanges with me regarding your professional activities. You get to hear all about how it is that I was able to make this my full-time work. I've shared with you guys before, I've been a full-time astrologer now for almost 16 years, like 15 and a half years, a little bit more. And the first 7 years of my business, I lived below the poverty line in Canada. You shouldn't have to do that. And my hope is that you don't have to do that. A part of why I ended up doing that is because I made a lot of mistakes. I was learning as I went. All of these tools like YouTube, like social media, they were very new. And I was still trying to find my way into more traditional forms of media. Like, for example, I had gotten a production deal and I spent time developing a show for television, and that didn't end up working out. But that ended up being such a massive blessing in my life, because that led me to say, okay, I'm going to do YouTube. And as a result of doing YouTube, all these incredible things opened up into my life. And I feel very grateful for all the things that worked, but also all the things that didn't work. And lots of other lessons that you will learn from me as to my journey in entrepreneurship, spiritual entrepreneurship. And so this is really the only business class I teach. It is once a year. It is in the summer, and it is coming up very soon. In the middle of July, I will be teaching at Kepler College. Now, spots are very limited. We keep the class small because of the mentorship aspect. I mean, when we get 20 students, it means that because of the mentorship and the questions and the feedback that I give, I mean, I end up spending hours a week and having those interactions in person, or online rather, but live. People get their questions answered. You come to a depth of understanding as to what spiritual entrepreneurship means for you. You get feedback, loving, empowering feedback on you and what it is and how it is that you share. And it really is an eye towards maximizing your potential and your blessings and knowing yourself and being yourself more fully. And that is more than enough to attract abundance and all kinds of good things into your life. So my hope is that I'm some part of facilitating that for you. It's a very rewarding experience that I go through, and students again and again have said how much they got out of this course. And so I hope that you'll check that out on the Kepler College website. Link is in the description below. Remember, spots are extremely limited. There are very few spots, and this class will fill up. It always does. And so I hope that you will join us. Don't wait for the waiting list. Don't wait for it to fill up, but rather, if you feel inspired to take that step, that's going to be the thing you need so that you start to align yourself with spiritual entrepreneurship and prosperity as you are going to uniquely define it, then this is the course for you at Kepler College. Link is in the description below. And I do want to let you know a couple of quick things as well. opaastrology.org. I am going to be speaking as part of a panel June 12th, which is a look at the so-called bad planets. It's a wonderful panel discussion that will be taking place. I'll be talking about Uranus. I think this is going to be so enlightening. So check that out. I hope that you will consider joining. OPA is a wonderful organization that is geared towards professional astrologers, and they've got lots of online events that take place constantly. So have a look at their website. I also want to remind you that Achyuta Bhava Das, his class on the mystical roots of astrology, is rescheduled, and it'll be taking place in September. That is choose your tuition rate on right now until the end of August. So I'll be reminding you of that class again and again as we move along through this summer. But I wanted to let you guys know now, if you already signed up for that before, you're automatically signed up for this class at its rescheduled dates. And what else? Well, look, in Denver, In August, I will be in Denver. So I hope that you will come visit. Come check that out with the ESAR conference at esar2022.org. This is set to be very exciting. Over 100 incredible speakers are going to be there. Really, the big dogs of astrology are going to be there all under one roof as part of this really huge conference event that is set to take place in Denver, Colorado, or just outside Denver, Colorado. So I hope that you will join us. Save the date, mark your calendar. That is taking place in the second half of August. And so I'll get to see friends and fans in Colorado as well. And thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, I'm here at the NORWAC conference. I've been having so much fun. I will be sharing more about this on my TikTok, on my Instagram. Thank you to everybody who's been joining me there. I appreciate you guys so very much. Thank you. And thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Thank you to the sponsor for this video, Keen. Visit trykeen.com/Nadiya to get your first 10 minutes for only $1.99 with one of their trusted advisors. I too had a chance to try Keen when I was approached to have them as a sponsor. I loved my reading, and I only recommend services I trust. Visit trykeen.com/Nadiya to get your first 10 minutes for only $1.99.